Hey guys, I wanted to make this video because I feel that boxing, MMA, and football are sinful. And I also noticed that not a lot of Christians seem to have this view. When I look up Christians against combat sports, it seems like most of the articles are defending, participating, or watching these combat sports. And I feel so strongly about this because I don't think it's even debatable. I think it's unambiguously sinful and immoral to watch these things or participate in them or support them. And I want to discuss why. So the first reason here is that it's well known and it's unambiguous and uncontroversial that these things cause brain damage. They cause irreparable brain damage. And oftentimes it will leave the fighter or the football player in a state where they cannot live a normal life at all because they have serious brain damage that affects them. And the examples that could be given from boxing and MMA are innumerable. I list a few well-known cases here. But in football, it's also extremely common. And because there are so many people who play football, the majority of CTE cases are from American football because you're wearing a helmet and you're slamming into someone. And very often your head will get hit, you'll get a concussion, and concussions are well known to cause permanent brain damage. So in all three of these sports, you have examples of people having brain damage and having their lives ruined because they participated in them. The next issue is the fact that when you're watching these, you're watching violence as entertainment. And it's a type of violence, again, that results in permanent damage. So that's the issue. A lot of times the apologists for these sports will say, well, it's just imposing your will on someone else. And they'll give examples of other sports where you impose your will on someone else, like in basketball or judo. And they'll say, this is just like that. Well, it's kind of like that, but it's also not like that at all, because in those other sports, you can impose your will on someone without causing them irreparable damage. And that's what we're taking objection to. If it were flag football, we wouldn't care. If it were, I don't know, some permutation of MMA where only submissions were allowed, like judo, then maybe we wouldn't care. But the issue is, it's ruining people's lives. You know, you're paying for entertainment for two people to punch to punch each other rather in the face over and over and over again. That's what you're paying for. It's violence, and it causes irreparable damage. And a good question to be asked here is kind of the old cliche: what would Jesus do? Would Jesus Christ pay to watch two people punch each other in the face over and over and over again? Would he approve of that? Do you think he'd be in the audience at an MMA fight or a boxing fight? And the answer is no, of course not. And even people who are pro MMA or boxing get admits of that. I can't think of anyone who would try to defend the proposition that Jesus Christ would be on board with a boxing match or an MMA match, especially when you consider this next point, the fact that these spectacles, while not part of the actual sport, it's like part and parcel with the sport, that they exploit women in some way. They either have them as ring girls, where they're dressed immodestly, or as cheerleaders, and the halftime shows in football are oftentimes ridiculously immoral as well. And again, while that's not part of the sport, it's part and parcel with the sport. And almost ubiquitous, anytime you see these sports, you see this exploitation as well. And another thing that's not technically a part of the sport, but part and parcel with it would be the pre-fight trash talk and hatred. It's basically, we're getting two people together, they're going to insult each other in terrible ways, and then they're going to get in a ring and punch each other in the face for money. And that's our sport. That's our quote-unquote sport. Well, it's actually not a sport. It's just abuse. And it's sinful to watch, in my opinion. So what are some of the responses? This is from gotquestions.org. And they take an apologetics approach. They say, these things are not necessarily sinful. And I wanted to read some of what they write. This is from one of their articles, and it says, when both parties agree to rules, when the intent is not vengeance or mayhem or killing, and when the event is supervised, then it's a sport. What happens at a football or hockey game can be extremely violent. The same acts done to someone unaware in walking down the street would be immoral and criminal. Given these stipulations, games involving combat can be legitimate contact sports. And then they say, Christians are not obligated to avoid MMA at all costs, but neither can they partake without prayerful, careful understanding. And so I kind of object to their invocation of prayer here. I think that that's wildly inappropriate. What exactly are you praying for? Are you praying God to bless this match as they punch each other in the face for your entertainment? Are you praying about whether this is a moral thing to do, to engage in, or to watch? And then they say here, when the intent is not violence or mayhem or killing, and when the event is supervised, then it's a sport. Well, if you apply that consistently, that can be used to justify outrageous violence, even worse than what is typically seen in boxing and MMA. So I don't think that this can consistently be applied to combat sports to justify them, and so I think this response misses the mark. They also say here, many believers are uncomfortable with the idea of violence in any form or for any reason, yet Scripture does not advocate for total pacifism. In fact, the Word speaks of God giving people martial prowess. The concept of training, practicing, and competing in combat techniques is compatible with the biblical worldview. In fact, training in MMA provides less lethal methods of self-defense. These are more merciful than the use of weapons. So here, they appear to be saying, almost like, engaging in these things is okay as long as it's for self-defense, but what we're not objecting to is any self-defense aspects of training in combat sports, learning to fight and defend yourself. We're not objecting to that. No one objects to that. What we're objecting to is the entertainment aspect of this, doing this for entertainment. When someone's watching an MMA fight or a boxing fight, they're not watching a CCTV footage that someone found where someone's using boxing techniques to defend the innocent. They're not watching a war film where we're fighting back against the bad guys using MMA. Instead, it's organizing an event where two people get together, do trash talk, and then punch each other in the face for money, and that's your entertainment. So it's kind of a red herring to point to any type of self-defense, which is legitimate, and trying to apply that to the situation, which is not what we're contesting at all. And then they say, a related complaint is that combat sports, such as boxing or MMA, are intended to hurt the other guy. This is false in any meaningful sense. The goal of MMA competition is not to physically injure the other person. It's to win according to the rules. So let's analyze this. The rules in MMA basically say that when someone's incapacitated or they submit, then you win. So that's how you win. The way you win in MMA is by hurting someone. You can't win in MMA if you don't hurt someone. So the goal is absolutely to hurt the other person. And so this is a misleading response. It misses the mark. And it says this is false in a meaningful sense. It's like, no, it's the exact opposite of false. It's true in any meaningful sense. When the goal is to hurt someone, then yes, the intention is definitely to hurt the other guy. That's the whole point of the sport. And then in Catholic Answers, you have Trent Horn, who did a video on this, and this is a transcript from their site. And he says, to give another example, if you look at Renaissance art because you enjoy seeing naked people and it makes you feel aroused and excited, then you shouldn't look at Renaissance art. But that's a you problem, not a Renaissance art problem. But if you enjoy combat sports because you appreciate the skill on display and commitment to athleticism, then it can be a healthy thing for Christians to enjoy watching or participating in. But again, if you apply this consistently, the fact that, as long as it's you admiring their athletic prowess, then it's okay. If you apply that consistently, again, it can be used to justify outrageous violence, even worse than what is typically seen in MMA and boxing. Something doesn't become moral just because you say, wow, look at his technique and skill as he punches that person in the face over and over and over again. Isn't he skillful? That doesn't make it okay, Trent. It's still a sin. It's still a sin even if he's the most athletic, skilled, talented person doing it in the coolest way. It's still a sin to punch and kick someone in the face because that's going to cause them brain damage. Okay, so those are a few of the responses that I want to address. Again, this is what you see when you Google this topic. You'll see people defending these sports and saying, well, it's not necessarily sinful. But in my opinion, it is, and I think I've given good justification for it. And I'd be willing to debate anyone on this topic because I don't think there's a debate to be had, not a real one. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.